All right, so for this week of the Eminence in the Shadow episode, I'm going to kind of talk about the cut content again. I actually got to be able to read through the first book this time. I'm still waiting on the other three. You know, there's a delay in them. They're going to take like 2 weeks to get here, some of them. But don't worry, guys. I'm trying to not make the mistake I made in the first episode, which it being a cut forward to episode 4 or volume 4 book. But this week I think I got it. So the whole episode covered about 20 pages in the book. It's all of chapter 2. So the first episode was basically the first chapter, I'm thinking, of the 4th volume. Episode 2 was a little bit like a little bit of chapter 1 in the book, and then the rest of the second episode was actually chapter 1. So this week we're going to talk about cut content. It's really more just the cut content in this episode is just kind of rearranged, and I made some little notes that I'm sure somebody can correct me on. Maybe that the show did these for convenience because they might change in some of the later books to come. One of the first notes that I made that kind of changed in this episode was that they changed that he doesn't live on campus, and they gave the reason that he lives off campus because he's a low noble, and of course that's where he should live. But there was at least no mention in the book when I went back to that part of living off campus and the whole thing of being poor. There's the confession that happens outside of the school is done on the roof in the book, but they do it in the trees. You know, obviously they probably reused the scene again so that to save money and stuff. You know, it's common anime studios do that for the shows. First time they actually mentioned his name was in this chapter. They didn't do it in the whole first chapter of the book, and then they mention at the beginning of the second chapter that his name's actually Sid because he always talks in first person for the whole first chapter. They slightly changed the conversation they have between the princess and Sid about moving from the sections in the training course. He is a lot more adamant about not joining Section 1. Princess Alexia says to him, I'll join Section 9 if you want. And, you know, he immediately refuses that, and that's how we get to the part. You know, cut the conversation a little different. They do it a lot in parts of the show, cutting the conversation slightly different or having them at different times or kind of combining 3 conversations that happened at different times. They changed that there's trains in it. There's no mention of trains anywhere. In the first book, at least. Maybe that's another thing of it's going to happen in book 2 or 3, and so they just animated it in the first one, or maybe it's added detail later on, so they just added it here. But they exclusively mention in the book, at least, that they walk back to the dorm most of the time in all of the episodes, and they take different paths and side streets through the forest. But in this one, they just ride the train back, and so it kind of changes the conversations a little bit. Obviously, to where they have them instead of kind of on a leisurely stroll. They even mention that it takes like 30 minutes at one point to walk back, which it should take about 10, and Sid's a little pissed off about that, but, you know, he goes along with it. It seemed kind of interesting the way they at least either reworded it or changed the way it looked in the anime, that at Alexia's, you know, defeat at the tournament part, she talks about didn't lose to just somebody random. She lost exclusively to her sister, which is where she mentioned that she liked her sword style, which is a lot different than the animes, which it looked like she was trying to console her sister about losing. And instead, it was her beating her, and she said she liked it in the tournament. So that was a very kind of differently framed thing, which I think kind of takes away from the comparison of the sister kind of side story going on. That's going to be, you know, expanded upon in the further episodes. And lastly, you know, I just wanted a little mention of it. They have a conversation about the kidnapping taking place with Sid, and his friends they're eating lunch at it, and they buy him lunch to make up for telling the secret that he told to them to keep from the princess about him confessing. He actually, in his mind, thinks, you know, oh, she got what she deserved. He's then, you know, approached by the teacher guy and point him and say, you're the last person that knew her, and we've counted out all the other suspects, so it has to be you, basically. A little more definitive than the show. Knights are not surrounding him. Just it was the teacher that came up, and all the knights order that came are actually standing at the door to the cafeteria. It frames it a little differently. I guess if you want to say they're saving money on animation, maybe the cafeteria would have been more expensive, but also they would have been able to reuse the scene, so it's a little different. I wonder how it could have worked out. For people that want to know the little spoiler for next episode, I'll reveal who the bad guy is. You know, if you don't want to hear this part, I'll give you time. But if you want to know who is the person that kidnapped the princess, it's obviously so obvious that a lot of people guessed it, that it's the main guy who is her fiance ends up kidnapping her. And of course, you know, he works for the cult of Diablos, because everyone does in this universe, even though the main guy can't figure that out yet. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. I might make a video about episode 2 and go back, but I might just keep going forward and hope to try to get the books and you know, fill up my knowledge for the next episode. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!